who was equally as useless as his dad, John Lackland. And you remember that Edward I helped Henry III to escape imprisonment, but he didn't take the throne for himself. He just gave it back to his dad, because he was a good son like that. So let's learn a little bit more about Edward I and whether or not he was a good ruler. So, Edward I had the nickname Longshanks. Now, like you remember me saying, we used to give the nickname Longshanks to one of our friends who was incredibly tall. And I don't know why we did that. We just called him Longshanks because of his height. Now I don't know where this comes from, and hopefully we will find out where Longshanks originated from. So, Edward I was born on the 17th of June 1239, and he died on the 7th of July 1307. He reigned from the 16th of November 1272 until his death, again on the 7th of July 1307. Edward was a good king, hooray! After two awful leaders, England desperately needed somebody who knew what they were doing. He learnt harsh lessons from the mess made by his father, Henry III, and also his grandfather, John, and used them to become a strong and fair ruler. He worked hard to bring about peace with the barons. You remember the barons from last time were basically rich landowners who didn't like to be told what to do. And his fighting achievements in the Battle of Evesham and then later in the Crusades gained him reputation as a fearsome warrior. He doesn't look all that fearsome. He was powerful, clever, fierce, and ambitious for himself and his country. Edward I left a legacy of law and order. So he sounds like he knows what he wants, and he knows what he was doing, and he knew what he was doing. So, Edward I, Longshanks. When Edward was still a young prince, his father, Henry III, got himself into a civil war with the barons, led by Edward's godfather, Simon de Montfort. You remember us looking at that a little bit in the last video, but I didn't realise that the guy in charge of it all was Edward's godfather. That's a bit of a plot twist. Edward fought on Henry's side, but was captured and held hostage after de Montfort won the Battle of Lewes. But Edward was cunning and escaped in May 1265 whilst on a hunting trip. Clearly he wasn't having too hard a time as a hostage. They let him go hunting. Edward's return to Henry's forces brought victory to the king. De Montfort was defeated at the Battle of Evesham. Edward's reputation of a Simon de Montfort, but he gave it back to his dad, so if anybody was to dispute that, even I would have said, hang on, hold on a second. Once he was king, he made many improvements, particularly to the legal system. He also built lots of castles, including Caernarfon in Wales. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. That's Caernarfon. Caernarfon. Edward made sure everyone knew he was in charge. So, face the facts. Edward was a giant for his times. Here we see the Longshanks, 1.9 meters or 6 foot tall, 6 foot 2 inches tall. His impressive height earned him the name Longshanks. So, yes, it's true. Longshanks means anybody who is unnaturally tall, and we did in fact call our friend Longshanks because he was very tall as well. So you can give anybody you know that nickname if they are, monstrously tall. And he has 6 foot 2 inches, even though today it's like pretty standard for a guy to be maybe 6 foot on average. Back then everybody was quite small. I don't know why that is, but as we progress as a human race, we seem to have got taller, which is a little bit odd. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Military might. As a young prince, Edward had done the usual medieval gap year and joined the Crusades. That's what the kids were doing back then. There wasn't much fighting for him to do, but he did manage to escape an assassination attempt by one of the original assassins, an order of Shia Muslims. Following the death of his father, Edward returned to England to find himself king. Hooray, what a surprise. In his new role, he decided to take on his neighbours, Wales and Scotland. Edward fought Llewellyn ap Gruffydd, Prince of Gwynedd, and eventually the Welsh prince was defeated and killed. Edward then named his own son the Prince of Wales. Every first son of the monarch has been called the Prince of Wales since then. Wow, I didn't know that. That's so interesting. So, Prince Charles, our current prince, son of Queen Elizabeth II, he is the Prince of Wales, and Princess Diana, his wife, well, deceased wife, was the Princess of Wales. That's very interesting. Edward then turned his attention to Scotland and earned the nickname Hammer of the Scots. He even stole the Stone of Scone, or Scone, an important symbol of Scottish kingship, and had it taken down to London, but it didn't return to Scotland until 1996. Wow, that's a very long time. Scotland just wouldn't go quietly, however, and England was still waging battles in the north when he died in 1307, and really, peace or, relations with Scotland have never really been all that wonderful. Even today, Scotland are trying to gain their independence as a completely separate country. And they've tried, and unfortunately they failed in a referendum a few years ago now. So, royal romance. In 1254, at the age of 15, Edward had travelled to Spain to marry 9-year-old Eleanor of Castile. Oh my god. Okay, so he was married at the age of 15 and his wife was 9 years old. That is insane. And I know things were very different back then, but crikey, you could have at least she died in 1290, he was heartbroken. He had her body carried in a procession from Lincoln to Westminster, and a large cross put up at every place the procession stopped, 12 in total, including Charing Cross in London. You can actually see a copy of the final memorial cross outside Charing Cross station today. That's very interesting. Again, the women of the royalty, Eleanor of Castile. Hopefully we could do a little extra video on her, because to be married at 9 years old, wow, what a thing to have to deal with. That's quite something. Okay, so let's have a look at the portrait of Edward. So, he looks to be, again, quite a genteel kind of person. Curly hair, as runs in the family, and this is a strange sort of way to wear your moustache. His forebears had really big, thick beards, as we see. I like his bows, actually. Normally, they have them facing forwards, but I like this kind of over-the-shoulder kind of pose. It's quite something. So let's look at the timeline of events and see what major events happened in his life. So in 1239, like we know, Edward was born. In 1272, Edward succeeds to the throne. In 1284, Edward I conquers Wales. In 1295, we have the Old Alliance, AULD. Scotland and France agree to an alliance against England, known as the Old Alliance. To get his own back, Edward I took the Scots Stone of Scone, on which the Scottish kings had always been crowned. That was a little bit mean. And again, that didn't get returned until 1995 or 1996. In 1305, Scottish rebel William Wallace is captured. So, William Wallace was a Scottish landowner who became one of the main leaders during the Wars of Scottish Independence. He was appointed Guardian of Scotland and served in his role until his defeat at the Battle of Falkirk in July 1298. In August 1305, Wallace was captured in Royston near Glasgow and handed over to Edward I, who had him hanged, drawn and quartered for high treason and crimes against English civilians. So this might be an interesting thing to look at as well in the future. In 1306, Robert the Bruce becomes King of the Scots, and in 1307, Edward dies. So Edward seems like he had his head screwed on, a little bit petty in times. He was a giant for the times at 6 foot tall, 6 foot 2 inches tall. He got married at 15 and his wife was 9 years old. And he really wanted everybody to know that he was in charge, and I think he did a good job of doing that. He was a good warrior and good sort of had a good battle head on him. So let's take the quiz and see how much we remembered. I knew they would ask this. Question 1 of 4. Edward married at the age of 15, but how old was his Spanish wife, Eleanor of Castile? We've just said this, and she was 9 years old. I think you'd never forget that because it's such a young age and it's so bizarre. Correct. Eleanor was just 9 years old when she married the 15-year-old prince. Question 2 of 4. What did Edward I take from the Scots that angered them so much? Was it the crown jewels? Was it the stone of Scone? Or was it the Scottish throne? Well, we know that the crown jewels were lost, weren't they? They were lost at sea forever because of John. The Scottish throne they hadn't managed to take, so I'm going with that stone of Scone, or Scone, however you want to say it. So correct, Edward I took the stone of Scone, which had been used in the coronation of Scottish kings throughout history. Question 3 of 4. Known as Longshanks because of his height, how tall was Edward I? Was he 1.8 metres or 5 foot 11? Was he 1.9 metres, 6 foot 2? Was he 2 metres, 6 foot 7? Or was he 1.6 metres, 5 foot 3? He was definitely 6 foot tall, 6 foot 2 tall. Yes, that's correct. Edward I was 1.9 metres or 6 foot and 2 inches tall, which was really, really tall for somebody during these times. If anybody knows why people were shorter back then than they are now, please let me know in the comments. I would really love to know if anybody's like a, I don't know, historical biologist, if that's even a thing. So, question 4 of 4. The origin of the first son of the English monarch being named the Prince of Wales dates to Edward I's victory over the Welsh Prince of Gruffydd. Was this false or was this true? And I'm going to say true because that was a really interesting fact that I had no idea about. So correct, Edward defeated the Prince of Gruffydd and named his own son Prince of Wales. And every first son born to the monarch would be the future Prince of Wales. So that is Edward Longshanks, the giant king, as I'm going to name him now. And it seemed like he got everybody in line and everybody kind of liked him to an extent, and he did some good and some bad things for England. So in the next video we are going to be moving on to Edward II, which I am guessing is going to be Edward's son. So thank you so much for listening, guys. I really hope that you found this to be relaxing and informative. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon.